Well, my assessment is that this is a step down for Donald Trump. It allows him to take a win with very little risk for Canada. I suspect for the first 15 years, heck, for the first 30 years, there's going to be very little profit as the vast majority of toll revenue goes to offset the cost of construction, which was the original deal with Michigan to begin with. And so if there's no money to take 50% and put into an economic development fund, well, political talk, the president wins for accepting this deal and making it look like he had a win. And the cost to us as Canadians is likely going to be very, very small.
Very, very small. Those are not the words of a Carney defender. Those are not the words of a liberal politician spinning a bad deal. Those are the words of the Mayor of Windsor, the city that built this bridge, the city that needs this bridge, the city that has been waiting for this bridge longer than anyone. And he is describing what Canada actually gave up to get it open. Because here is what the headline said. Canada surrendered 50% of the Gordie Howe Bridge profits to the United States. Trump won another concession. Carney caved again. Canada blinked. And here is what is actually true. There are no profits yet. There will not be meaningful profits for years, possibly decades, because a $6.4 billion bridge has to pay for itself first. And 50% of zero is still zero. Trump got a post on Truth Social that he extracted a concession from Canada. Canada got the bridge open. Trade resumes. Workers move forward. And Washington is celebrating a win that may cost them almost nothing to collect. Subscribe to Canada Point right now because tonight we are breaking down the bridge deal that is either Carney's most embarrassing concession or his most elegant diplomatic maneuver. And the answer depends entirely on one word: profits. To understand why this deal matters, you need to understand how the Gordie Howe Bridge got held hostage in the first place. Canada funded this bridge. Canada built this bridge. $6.4 billion Canadian dollars to connect Windsor and Detroit with the most technologically advanced land border crossing between the two countries. It was complete. It was ready. Communities on both sides were prepared for the enormous economic benefits of a second crossing between the two auto capitals of North America. And then it stopped. Reports emerged that the owner of the privately owned Ambassador Bridge, the existing crossing that holds a monopoly on Windsor-Detroit traffic, had met with Trump officials. And within hours of that meeting, Trump posted that the bridge would not be allowed to open. Canada built a $6 billion bridge and then needed American permission to open it on American soil. That is the leverage Trump was exploiting. And Carney needed to neutralize it without giving away the actual economic value Canada spent decades building.
There's also giving the U.S. some sort of veto and consultation role on any toll changes greater than 10% in either direction on the new bridge. I mean, what do you make of that level of engagement that they're giving the Trump administration here?
I think that's a free give. I mean, I think that means absolutely nothing. And I say that as the chair of the Windsor-Detroit Tunnel. The city of Windsor is a half owner in the tunnel that connects Windsor and Detroit. And so I understand toll increases. We understand the operation. And it's very unusual to say you're going to increase costs more than 10% anyway at any given time. And so I think that's a give with no risk at all on the Canadian side. Again, Donald Trump can take a win looking like he got a deal from Mark Carney, but operationally, I think it means almost nothing.
A free give. That is how the Mayor of Windsor, a man who chairs the Windsor-Detroit Tunnel and understands border crossing economics better than almost anyone in Canada, describes the toll veto concession Trump also extracted. It is essentially impossible to raise tolls more than 10% in a single year on a major infrastructure crossing anyway. No operator does that. It would devastate traffic volumes and undermine the entire revenue model. So Trump got a veto over something Canada was never going to do in the first place, and the mayor is calling it a free give. Now add that to the profit-sharing arrangement where Canada is giving America 50% of profits that will not exist in meaningful amounts for years because construction costs come first. What you are left with is a deal that looks substantial in a Truth Social post and is largely symbolic in a spreadsheet. That is not an accident. That is architecture, diplomatic architecture designed by a former central banker who understands exactly how infrastructure financing works and exactly how much Trump needs to be able to claim a win for his base. And this is the detail that the entire story hinges on. The detail that separates a genuine concession from a masterful piece of political theater. The agreement says profits, not revenue, not toll collections, not gross receipts, profits. That distinction is enormous, because before any profit exists, the bridge must first recover billions of dollars in construction costs through toll revenue. The original arrangement, negotiated under Stephen Harper's government, was that toll revenue would be used to pay back construction costs before Michigan and Canada shared proceeds equally. Now Trump has inserted himself into that arrangement and claimed 50% of whatever comes after that payback period during a 15-year window, but the mayor of Windsor said it plainly. He does not think there will be much to put in Trump's economic development pot for the first 15 years, possibly 30 years. Because the math of recovering $6 billion in construction costs through toll revenue takes time. Trump saw the word profits and heard billions of dollars. The people who actually understand infrastructure financing heard something closer to a rounding error on a long-term balance sheet.
The day when you read between the lines here, when you look at the language, in the agreements, in the press conference, or the press release rather, from the Prime Minister's office and Donald Trump's Truth Social post, there's some well-crafted political language here that I think, knowing Donald Trump and the way he operates, I think it's fair to say he needed a way to be able to get a win. He got a win from Canada, but as a Canadian and as a taxpayer in Canada, I'm not worried about the amount that he's getting. I think it's immaterial in the grand equation, and I think good on the Prime Minister for coming up and finding a way to get this bridge open, because it had to happen.
Immaterial in the grand equation. The mayor of Windsor, the chair of the Windsor-Detroit Tunnel, a man whose city's entire auto industry economy depends on this crossing, saying the financial impact on Canada is immaterial, and then saying good on the Prime Minister for finding a way to get it done. That is not a partisan defense. That is a practitioner's assessment. Someone who knows border crossing economics, tunnel operations, and infrastructure financing, telling the country that Carney threaded a needle that most politicians would have fumbled badly. Because the alternative was not getting the bridge open at all. The alternative was watching a $6 billion Canadian investment sit idle while an American billionaire's political donation kept it closed. The alternative was leaving Windsor's auto industry, Ontario's manufacturing sector, and Canada's most important trade corridor in limbo indefinitely. Carney got the bridge open. The math says he gave away very little to do it, and Trump got to celebrate on Truth Social. That is not a defeat dressed up as a win. That is a win dressed up as a concession. Now, to be fair, there is a genuine criticism of this deal that deserves honest treatment. Conservative critics argue the real problem is not the bridge deal specifically, it is the pattern, a series of individual concessions made outside of a broader, comprehensive negotiation. The digital services tax, the Netflix contribution, defense spending timelines, and now the bridge. Their argument is that Canada should be negotiating everything together at the table rather than giving ground issue by issue as Trump applies pressure one file at a time. That is a legitimate strategic debate, and it is one Canadians should be having honestly. But it is a different argument from claiming this specific bridge deal was a terrible concession. Because the numbers do not support that claim, and the mayor of Windsor, who has no political incentive to defend the Liberal government, said so directly. And here is what actually matters on July 27th when that bridge opens. The most technologically advanced land border crossing in North America comes online. You drive off the 401 in Windsor and you are on the I-75 in Detroit without a single traffic light. No Ambassador Bridge bottleneck. No 7 traffic lights through downtown Windsor. Direct highway-to-highway connection carrying the just-in-time auto parts that keep both countries' manufacturing sectors running. The auto industry gets certainty. Supply chains get reliability. The Ambassador Bridge loses its monopoly, and the $6 billion Canada invested finally starts serving the purpose it was built for. Trump gets a Truth Social post. Canada gets a bridge. You tell me who won that negotiation. Donald Trump genuinely believes he extracted a major concession from Canada on the Gordie Howe Bridge. He posted about it. His supporters celebrated it. Washington told the story of another Canadian surrender. Meanwhile, the mayor of Windsor called the financial impact on Canada immaterial, the toll veto a free give, and the overall deal a step down for Trump that allows him to save face while Canada gets what it built. There is a phrase for this kind of negotiation: letting the other side think they won. It requires a specific kind of intelligence, not the kind that shouts and threatens and posts on social media at midnight. The kind that reads a balance sheet, understands how infrastructure financing works over decades, and figures out exactly how much symbolic space you can give someone who desperately needs to feel like a winner before they will let you get on with the actual business of governing. Mark Carney spent years at the Bank of England and the Bank of Canada making decisions worth hundreds of billions of dollars under conditions of enormous pressure. Trump spent years telling people he won deals that later turned out differently. On July 27th, a $6 billion Canadian bridge opens, and Washington is celebrating. Canada built that bridge. Canada opened that bridge, and Canada gave away profits that may not exist for 30 years to do it. Very, very small. The mayor said it, the math confirms it, and Trump has no idea. Subscribe to Canada Point for honest, deep analysis of the deals and decisions shaping Canada's future. Turn on notifications, and we will see you in the next one.